when your healthcare benefits end that day. Retire on the first day of the next month. Then get the benefits for another 28, 29 days. Speaking of things that surprise you to find out about. So when I began this role, 7.5, 8 years ago, I had learned a little bit about the Evans Center, but really just such a thin amount. I am not, I told boss who hired me at the time that I don't do surgery and I don't do budgets. Good or bad, and I also don't do research. I'm not a natural born researcher. I'm an intuitive thinker, not a driven metrics thinker. So really and truly, the work that one of the main things we were charged with was developing a community partnership that became the congregation here in Western. Without Lexi's help and the help of others in driving the research into that, we simply would not have been successful. Because of that work, we now have metrics that we can rely on. I agree. It was that good. that we can demonstrate a reduction in emergency department use by something like 50–60% in inpatients compared to others. So those kinds of things are really significant. Spiritual care is not known for its capacity to do research. Thanks so much to George Fichette and both of you will have them next month that made a way for Shelley to find a way to master some of what he's doing there. And I reference all of that really as a way of setting up this conversation. People also ask me on my left, why in the world are you doing it? Why are you working? Why are you doing that? Well, your very last day. And the truth is the different part. The truth is because we did it in the next slide. Thanks to a colleague, Anastasia Holman, who didn't invent this phrase, but who makes it sing and uses it frequently. Teamwork makes the dream work. So the Evans Center partnering with CCN helped to take what was really a very nascent idea, pilot it, have the metrics to demonstrate it, put it into practice, and now it's a pretty refined instrument. So that's been the main thrust of my work here, but I've been really blessed to partner with others who also use the Evans Center mechanism to innovate in spiritual care. And innovate in spiritual care is probably never going to catch on like on a major television movie starring George Clooney, but it is pretty unique. You don't think of innovation and stopping by a patient's room for a prayer, but there are really cool innovations that happen. And my work in this has really just been to connect folks, offer encouragement, offer support, but the Evans Center, through their application process and the way that they help folk get through the application process, provides pretty significant funding to really help people realize those dreams and take a dream from a pilot into practice, and to have the metrics that would back that up to make it operational if it succeeds. So that's been a pathway that we've walked for CCN, and I think it's a pathway that might work for some of these other programs that we're going to talk about today as well. So there's 3 grants that I'm working with currently. The middle one of which, Moy University, Moy Teaching Hospital, really dates back many decades, and we're grateful for the limit for being able today to talk some about the whole history of that, as well as where we go further. But I want to start with my colleague, Amy Meek. Amy is I'm not make sure I get your title correct now, Amy. Is Director of Community Engagement. Is that correct for IU Health?
I'm Director of Community Health for our clinical operations, each of our
clinical
regions.
operating. Yeah. So Amy and I met years ago when I became, and I use this line a lot, you'll forgive me, the only male and the only chaplain on the board of the Indiana Parish Nursing. We fell in together pretty early in my work. I was out in the community and ran into Jan Gaddis. Why am I talking about Jan's last name? Jan Gaddis, who has been doing this work in the community for years and years and years. And the opportunities for working together became apparent. Parish nursing, now called faith community nursing, has roots that goes back 50 years or more to Granger Westberg. Granger Westberg is famous for that in writing a book. Brief. It's kind of interesting is that Gary Gunderson, who's the leader who put the kind of work we do at CCN on the map, got started in Memphis. Well, Granger Westberg and the work that founded Health Ministries and Faith Mission also in Memphis, but they didn't really talk with each other. So we have an opportunity to sort of say, how can we partner together? In my mind, the parish nursing model, faith community nursing model, focuses more on giving resources to congregations, whereas the CCN faith health model focuses on getting our patients who have needs connected with congregations who can need this. You get the difference? Faith community nursing has done tons and tons and tons of great work in the world, but has a difficulty getting and maintaining funding. So our little parish nursing group suffered from not having a dedicated executive director. Our grant request, in essence, was to come to the Value Center and said, could we find the metrics that would show that if we have a sustainable administrative structure, could we then demonstrate that and build up the operational end of this work, show that it really has function. I'm not going to read all of that to you. I'll read a bit of the portion that's outlined in yellow. ICPN, Indiana Center for Parish Nursing and Health Ministry, we developed a strategic plan to expand and sustain our health ministry, made up all of volunteers. The grant will support the ability of the team to carry out that plan. In essence, hiring an executive director for about 10 to 15 hours a week. The project integrates spiritual and religious dimensions by fostering health ministries within congregations, enhancing community well-being through faith-based. Next slide. Then I'm going to turn it to Amy to add. So that's our mission, right? To promote, connect, and sustain health ministries across the state of Indiana. Love the last line that I highlighted. We will punch above our weight. I think we've done. So, Amy, can I put you on the spot and ask you, what would you add about, because you were instrumental in writing the grant and helping us get this off the ground?
So we were, first of all, just very grateful for this grant. So thank you to everyone who's on that committee. We were really fortunate to have someone from IU Health who's on a leader in our organizational effectiveness team volunteer his time and come to our committee and really help us put together a very strong strategic plan. And as Jay said, we're a group of volunteers. So having a dedicated person to really help us launch that plan has been just instrumental. The first year has been amazing, and we're really looking forward to the second year and really getting our feet under us more with sustainability after this. I think that the next slide has like some of the outcomes from this past year, but one of the things is, a website, which sounds like just a website, okay, but the website actually has been really key in helping other congregations get validated tools to really launch health in their congregations. So some parts of our states in IU Health, we have a health ministry network where we really kind of help engage more congregations and finding a champion in their congregation for health and guiding them to this website where they can get information about vaccines, information about hypertension, or whatever the topic is. It's helped them to be able to develop programs that fit their congregation and using tools that we know are good for them to follow. So thank you for that. And you can see here just for this first year, we were able to hire our executive director. We've been able to find and track 97 faith community nurses across the state. And that's one of the metrics is we know there are faith community nurses, but they're not connected in any way. So connecting them and giving them resources to be more successful is part of this. And then multiple institutions invested are the congregations that we've been able to engage. You see our webpage is a big increase in unique visitors just in 1 month. And part of that's us being able to drive people to that for information. And then on that website, you'll see monthly toolkits. And so those toolkits really help congregations know what to do with information as well, not just give them information, but give them ideas on how to launch it. And then we're working on updating that, keeping it going, and getting our FCN database system going.
I'll say this much more by way of background. Thank you, Amy. What is a faith community nurse? So it's someone who's a certified nurse, LPN, RN, who has completed a significant, how many hours is the course?
It's a good question. It's 8 weeks long. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so an 8-week course and how to do nursing in a parish in a way that addresses issues of faith and health, and it maintains, there's certain things you can't do as a nurse, you're not licensed to do as a nurse in that role. Right? So what are those boundaries, and what can you do, what can't you do, how can you connect, how can you work in that? We had really good conversations with Leah and some of our executive leaders here at IU, especially Brian Shockney, who's our exact role, I call him the president of presidents, kind of like that. And Brian and Amy are good friends, and they have interest in this. We think there's a pathway here for nurses are overworked, tired, and do a lot of paperwork that's not necessarily filling their bucket purpose-wise. We think there may be a way of support our nurses at IU Health, get this training, and then find some way to recognize them for their time in their own congregations to really help push this out. So if the pilot's successful, we think that's one pathway towards sustainability and increase. The other thing I mentioned, then we'll move on to our next thing. 97 nurses, Indiana is one of the larger states, has one of the larger populations of faith nurses, certified faith nurses in the country. That's the good news. The bad news is we don't have a way of keeping up with them, coordinating, and that kind of thing. So this executive director role, Lisa Fleetwood is our executive director. She worked here for a while. You may know Lisa Greatsall. Is helping to drive that and help make that sustainable. So again, pilot, practice, metrics, operations. We think that's a way to move. All right, the next slide. So I love this slide. The saints have gone before. In the asterisk, I says, with apologies to Jim Lemons and Steve Ivy, who are very much still with us. Right? But we're sitting in the Steve Ivy conference room, and I think the Evans Center in many ways was Steve's brainchild. And I just feel so grateful because when I began here 7 or 8 years ago, I walked in and inherited connections with the Fairbanks Center for Ethics, also one of Steve's brainchilds, and the Evans Center. And what fantastic partnerships these are. I also reference it because I've been here like about I think it was my first day. I mean, it's my last day, my first day. It was really Steve Ivy showed up in my office and said, Jim Lemons, Jim? No. You're thinking about putting in an application for another Evans Center grant. Many years ago, we had a grant to begin working with the hospital that AMPATH and IU School of Medicine has a deep connection with in Eldoret, Kenya, to develop their chaplaincy program and bring professionalism to chaplaincy. So there was that grant. Then we had another grant I want to reference really quickly, and a current grant. So Jim, is there anything about that first grant you could enlighten the group about how that got started? What is the Moy Teaching Hospital background like that? Dr. Tim Lumber, Professor Emeritus, Riley School of Medicine.
I'm retired just this month. Yeah.
Congratulations. Yes.
I didn't realize that was important. Yeah, this was, looking back, I am truly awed by what has transpired. Keep telling people far beyond what I think any of us imagined would be possible. It was teamwork that made the dream work, I think, and I love that saying. Anastasia came, because it was grounded on a huge foundation that had been built with AMPATH, the best partnership between two universities in the world, in the world in the West, the Value and Moy University. And it wasn't the university that actually initiated that partnership. It was 4 faculty, the internist and a pediatrician, their own, who did this and had a dream that they needed to connect with the rest of the world while they had built the best infrastructure in Indiana to support the poor, I think, of any city, Indianapolis, in the country. And it was through the electronic medical record, which was developed here at the Regan Street Institute at IU. So many things have come out of IU that are kind of unsung. That was a huge one. And anyway, I had the privilege of going to Kenya many times. We started early on, and we went, my wife and 2 of our kids, one time and the other, us a different time, but we went over 30 plus times. Got involved in helping with the Riley Mother Baby Hospital and a number of other initiatives that you fall in love with friends there, and you learn how you can maybe help enable something to happen through their leadership and their work. And we didn't do that much other than connect. But one person we connected with that had spent 1.5 years studying here is a professor, Eunice Kamara. Most amazing woman I've ever met in my life, I think. And she had a dream also to develop a chaplaincy center. So on the parking lot of the Mother Baby Hospital, we had 3 40-foot containers that had brought most of the equipment over from another convent in Illinois, to equip the Mother Baby Hospital, which is delivering almost 20,000 babies a year. Started with 20 a day, 7,000 a year, first day, equipment. So on the parking lot, so we thought we befriended the company, the father and 2 sons that had built the Mother Baby Hospital. I know I'm going on a little bit, but
That's good.
They asked the 2 sons. The dad retired. He was building schools back in India. His retirement for girls, women, and changed his whole kind of giving pathway, philanthropic pathway. And his 2 sons, they converted these 3 40-foot containers to offices, beautiful offices, with a big boardroom on the front. So we arbitrarily put up the sign, the National Chaplaincy Training Center of Kenya. After talking to Eunice, and she had formed a team, and we'd done some stakeholder meetings, and then Jay volunteered with Anastasia to begin teaching chaplaincy, CPE, curriculum, and then evolved into teaching them to train, and then eventually evolved them into teaching them to train trainers, which was the ultimate sustainable model. And that happened over about 12 years, and we applied and got our first grant, which enabled Steve Ivy to go over and made a huge impact on multiple universities when he spoke to this collection of deans from Moy, but also other invited leaders in healthcare and so on. Steve had a great impression. And then we got a second and a third grant that just finished, um, which were truly, I don't want to go into any details, but ultimately, it was Eunice Kamara's dream with about 10 other full professors at Moy. Eunice was probably the first full professor female in Kenya in any avenue, and it was in religion, ethics, philosophy. And she empowered youth. That was her focus, was to empower youth, particularly girls. She continues to do, and she had multiple international grants, NIH grants with partners here and in Europe and so on. Still does. Well, she kept us moving through the systems, and the bureaucracy in the third world is often even greater than in the developing world, hard to imagine, but she enabled to navigate through the system and gathered a lot of leaders from academics and healthcare and throughout Kenya. And about 4 months ago, received a certificate of registration with the Kenyan national government of the Chaplaincy Training Center as the certifying body for all chaplaincy training in Kenya. And several other countries around Kenya are very interested in this work. And so she's one of her final events will be in October, September. I can't remember, October, I think. September. Anyway, which will be an international conference supported by extended funds we rolled over ourselves to help support this conference, which will bring international visitors from to kind of showcase, but also help develop partnerships that will carry forward, we hope, throughout Africa. Important. We stayed away from religion. Still recruiting for an atheist to be on the advisory board. We haven't found one yet in Kenya, at least an admitted one. Yeah. We do have Muslim. I can't find a Jewish rabbi to sit on the board either, but we're staying away from formal religions and trying to focus on spirituality and the common. And Eunice actually got spirituality to be a core value adopted for every student that enters Moy University, which is like 40,000. But that's become the label of the core value of all student learning. So a lot of little spin-offs, but ties all together. Amazing. I keep looking at this and then thinking how lucky we are to have partnered somehow with this group, right, Jay? And most of them are women. I must say there is one male professor of obstetrics that has been a driving force as well. I would mention Emily Chogi, who's 72 or 3. I met Emily. She's a professor of religion as well, and an expert, has studied and got her PhD here in the States. She lost one leg up at the thigh and part of the foot, the amniotic bands. It's not a genetic thing, but it's an in utero where amnion membrane rubs off and becomes a string and can tie around limbs and cause all sorts of birth defects. Well, she was born without one leg and only part of a foot. She's run the Boston Marathon, I think, twice. I met her climbing up a purpose, I don't know, 1,000 feet that she led us on a hike in Kenya, our first visit there. But it's those kinds of people that I think never mention it. They're humble. They just persist. They see the good in things and are willing to carry that forward in loving how love should really ripple around our world. So I've seen it as just a showcase that's taught us here much more than we have ever, I think, enabled them there, even though the impact there is huge. But I think it's taught us here how to genuinely.
I think that's the I can go back to 2 slides that I want to highlight. So the first grant paid for Steve to go to
Amongst
Moy,
the others.
along with Jim to help start this program. Then 7, 8 years later, Steve showed up in my office. Hey, Jim's thinking about putting in a values grant. You willing to do this? I went to talk to Anastasia, who I'd known for about 5 minutes. and said, Anastasia, would you like to help me put on this? And she said, sure. And so the idea was the grant was written to support 5 of their students to come here to IU. And we were going to build find a nice place for them to stay. Jim and I were looking all over town for residences for them to do a unit of clinical pastoral education at Methodist. We weren't quite sure how we were all worked it out, but we got the grant. That was in 2019. 2020, we all know what happened. So the coronavirus hit and nobody was traveling anywhere. So we quickly pivoted to a 2-hour a week, a 2-hour a month video conference for 2 years that helped us build a cohort and a stay. And then in the final year, we contracted with a professor at Presbyterian Seminary in Moy to take a lead on a CPE unit in Kenya led by a Kenyan. So in that way, it really, never waste a crisis. In that way, this became, I think, a richer offering for the group and for us than we would ever known. I mean, part of the reason I was a little hesitant to sign up is what do I know about teaching somebody how to do spiritual care in a context that's different? I'm glad to go as a fellow learner, but what do I know about as a teacher? That tension was always there. In the early months, Anastasia had us said, what we should do is read bell hooks. What was the book we read, Anastasia? Transformative.
What was it? Teaching to Transgress?
That Teaching to Transgress. Thank you.
Yes.
And that became a wonderful pathway to think and learn together about how to do that. So what I'd like to do is give Anastasia a few minutes to talk about her experience of working with us on this part of the grant. And then I want to go to a reading actually from Emily Chogi. So go ahead, Anastasia. What would you like to add?
Well, thank you, Jay, for calling me in. And of course, Jim, it's always good to hear and see you and showing up once a month in this space to work with students who were excited and wanted to learn and engaged in a process because they had a desire not only to be better chaplains, but also form something in Kenya that was sustainable and that is sustainable. And that was the desire. They were very serious about the work that they did. And I remember before we actually went into our second year, actually deciding, yes, we can do an American CPE, but we need to be reading something from their context and then allowing the adult learner, which were our students in Kenya, our chaplain students in Kenya, to choose their author. And we went into their context with them by purchasing the book that they wanted to read from an Kenyan author that helped explain what spiritual care, spirituality, and also maybe some psychotherapy, what that was in that context. By the time we were done for graduation, they actually had a graduation. And so they showed up in all of their caps and gowns and really took this work seriously. I was just honored to work with this group of people who I'll forever have connection with and relationships with and friendship with, which also helped me to say, I am an international, global ACPE educator. And so that also has expanded my sphere of influence. So I want to thank Jim for all the passion for coming with the grant, of course, for the Evans Center approving the grant and getting a chance to work with Jay and Jim has just been lovely. And Dr. Eunice always will have a connection. Just really quick, I introduced her to someone who needed a connection in Kenya as they work to try to improve hearing for children. And so having that connection through this grant is going to even expand some more work in Kenya. Thank you.
And so one of the things, thank you so much, Anastasia. One of the things that we did was in most CPE units, for residencies, not for interns, but for residencies, we have them complete with a capstone project of some kind. So that model became what was used. And so each of the 5 students wrote a really significant paper on theology and suffering. And Dr. Chogi, now here's someone I was teaching who PhD, all of the things that Ken talked about, it was so humbling to be part of that experience. If you go to the next slide, I just want to read, this is her paper, A Theology of Suffering. I'll just read this part, some of which is on the screen. So if you'll indulge me for reading quite a bit, I think this captures just what Anastasia was talking about sort of the embodied work of doing theology in another culture that comes out of that culture, not our own. So where do I want to start this? Give me. One of the strengths of the African community is a sense of brotherhood and solidarity, as indicated by the famous phrase of our African philosopher and theologian, I am because we are, and because we are, therefore I am. And coupled with this is the Ubuntu theology as propounded by our late Archbishop Desmond Tutu. However, this has become almost a museum piece as Africa has become increasingly westernized, especially in the urban areas, and the pressure of life has become burdensome. The response has been to erect high walls with signs that say, and I can't pronounce this, MBWAKALI, which translate as a fierce dog, at the gates to ward off some uncalled for strangers. The African language uses the same word for stranger and guest. Both words are the same in my native language, Nandi. The word toot is used for both. With this rich heritage of hospitality, we should not give in too quickly to the pressures of consumerism and fear. We need to draw from the resources of our faith in African religion and Christianity on the need to always welcome strangers, but with wisdom. The Kiswahili saying, translation, should guide us that the stranger should be empowered to be part of the solution, especially to the problem of suffering. Right, so that's the theoretical part. Even as I wrote this article, I was interrupted by a lady who came to my house several times for assistance because she finds our gate open and accessible. I was frustrated to be interrupted from my writing, but later I thought, this is what I'm writing about, responding to suffering. She's HIV positive and has come to my house on many occasions and giving me some stories about needing assistance for transport and food. She goes on. However, this time she looked really beat and claimed that she had been at the teaching hospital and has diarrhea. We gave her water, but then when I came close to her, I smelled alcohol. This gave me a signal. I'm not going to go into all the reading. She reached out with permission of this woman, to the woman's family, and together came up with a plan to help her into a rehab. So she closes. So we're caught between a rock and a hard place. The Bible believe that we should fear and do good. So we need to have welcome strangers, but with wisdom. So anyway, powerful theology at the gates, in places that are almost impossible for me to comprehend. And I encourage you, if you've not done so, to spend a little time with Jim and his wonderful partnership that he helps us support called Emoja, which educates something like 5,000
Parking
at a time. So really powerful work. Anastasia, Jim, anything else to add before we go on to our last time? And are we doing okay on time, Shelley?
I will say something just really quick. I think I'm grateful also for this grant and the work that we've done. And you said it, but it's on your next slide. And it says
Yes.
that they have formed the Association of Professional Chaplains in Kenya. That is huge. And it's because of the work that we did with them and also the funding from the Evans Center's grants. They have their own Association of Professional Chaplains. And so I'm just excited about that.
So these three grants really made it possible. And the highlighted piece there, Association of Professional Chaplains Kenya, will take you to their website, which is quite a professional website, and you can dig through and see all that they're doing. So that's a picture from the July 10th annual, I think it was the first or second annual conference, from people coming all over Kenya to be part of the APC of Kenya. Pretty cool.
Can I add just one
Please.
quick story? The writing of Emily was wonderful. So the gentleman that Jay mentioned is a professor at the East Africa Presbyterian University. Wonderful certified TB trainer. Do some people here from before.
Yeah.
Very conservative, and in most of Africa, you can't talk about many issues that you can here, and one is LGBTQ. So I began talking to them about the role of chaplaincy, that it's not, focused on any particular religion, but it is the common humanity. And I brought up this, and so chaplains have to be prepared to walk beside whomever they come across. Without judgment, create a safe place, and begin helping them build up their esteem, etc. I said an example would be of a topic that's hard for Africans, it's LGBTQ. And he just about shivered, I mentioned that. And I kept bringing it up periodically just as an example of, persons that they would meet. And this happens everywhere, even though it's denied. Eventually, he took on the task of giving a 1-hour workshop presentation to all of the team around LGBTQ. It was so hard for him, but he recognized the importance of it. And honestly, as much as he struggled personally, he said, that's not my role. It's my role is to learn and to then knowing how to love every child of God. So it was just another wonderful tiny part of this journey, but it exemplified what the power of love can do. And I think it really opened his mind, but mainly opened his heart too. And you could see that happen, and I think it impacted all of us.
I appreciate that memory. I also, he's not a young guy. Gives me hope. Yeah, he's still learning.
Yeah, he's probably at least 70.
So very exciting about the APC Kenya. I mean, so really the Evans Center, right? That contribution. Another.
I just wanted to specifically thank you for Lexi, because it's truly world changing. Thank you.
The last one we want to feature, Kathy Bertha Young, began with us 3 years ago as the educator and director of spiritual care at IU Health West in Avon, having come to us from I never get it right, Kathy. Pine Ridge, Pine Rest. The second one, somewhere to the north of us.
Pine Rest.
And it was Minnesota, right? No, Michigan.
Grand Rapids. I could even
Grand
show
Rapids.
you on my.
I know, I'm getting old. I can do it. So, but Kathy had done some really exciting work there in clinical pastoral education, all Spanish language CPE, with a seminary there in Grand Rapids. And what was exciting about it was the structure was set so to try to make this possible for bivocational pastors who didn't have any education and who wanted to learn how to do spiritual care in their contacts, many of whom were undocumented but not all of them. Was there a pathway that we could do that there? So Kathy went to Anastasia as her dotted line report with education, and worked with me, and the three of us put our heads together. Went to, I think he may be on the line, to Marcos Collado, who also shared a love and had been wanting to do something like this since he arrived, who's the director of spiritual care at Riley, and wrote up a proposal for the IU Health grant called, values grant called IU Health Latinx Spiritual Care Education Outreach Program. And so what I'd like to do is to turn it over to Kathy and Marcos to describe that a bit, and Anastasia to describe that a bit. I'll say this much more by way of setting it up. The structure, an extended unit of CP is usually over the academic year, 10 hours a week, 15 hours a week, over 9 months. Even that amount of time was hard for these bivocational pastors to find time to do. So it was so you take it from there, Kathy. What was the structure? How did it work? Where are we now?
Well, first, I just want to say I'm very grateful for the support to bring this project to IU Health, especially to Reverend Doctors Jay and Anastasia, and then especially also for the foundation funding, which none of this would have been possible without the funding. So in Grand Rapids, Michigan, at Pine Rest Christian Mental Health Services, we were approached by Calvin Seminary. There was a professor and his wife who were starting seminary training. Originally, it was certificate training for chaplaincy, and then it transitioned to, they developed an actual master's program that was accredited by ATS. Anyway, they approached us and said, could you do CPE in Spanish? And I was like, I would love to try. And it just was so exciting to work with the seminary. So for 6 years, they had, the seminary had their program, and then the students would come to us for CPE. At that time in Grand Rapids, and there's a sizable Latino community in Grand Rapids that even people who live there don't realize or understand. And the pastors are often working full-time secular jobs, pastoring churches, plus they were taking these education classes at the seminary, which were also all in Spanish. So the only way to make this work for the students was to do about almost 10 months, 40 weeks. Usually the academic year is like 22 weeks. So this is double. This is 40 weeks where we meet 3 hours a night and then some Saturdays for that period of time. And it made it doable. And at first the students were like, how long is this? And what are we doing? But it took off, and the students were so excited and they were so glad to be a part of it. I felt very honored to be a part of the program as well, because these students are incredibly motivated and really want to learn, very open to feedback. It was amazing. And it really comes down to opportunity. A lot of our students who speak English, who are white, have lots of opportunities, and they kind of take it for granted. The Latino students, this is the first time this opportunity had ever been presented to them, and they were so excited. And so I did that for 6 years in Grand Rapids. My only regret in all of that is that when the professor and his wife who started the program at Calvin Seminary, when they retired, I believe the program ended. And then of course the CPE program in Spanish ended when I left. So that's about my only regret. So, but I'm excited to be here. I was excited to start the program here. It was a lot of work starting it. one of the most challenging aspects of it is we didn't have a seminary feeder program like we had in Grand Rapids. So I was out recruiting. I visited churches, Latinx churches around the city of Indianapolis. I know Jay, I told Jay at one point, well, I'm visiting churches to recruit. And I don't know if you remember this, Jay, you said, well, that's a little bit above and beyond. And I'm like, they don't know what CPE is. They don't know the program exists. So we started with 3 students last year. And now the thing has gotten a lot of momentum. We have 7 students this year. I was visiting one of my current students was preaching at her church yesterday. So I went to visit her church and listen to her preach. And I had 2 others come up to me and say, well, I want to do CPE. Are you going to do more units? When are you going to do more units? And students, current students and the students from last year also want to continue. Well, when are you going to do more units and how are you going to do it? And let me know. And so the demand, now that we've got a little bit of momentum, the demand is really growing. And it's the same, very similar attitude to what I encountered in Michigan. It's an opportunity that they just did not have before we started this program.
Thank you, Kathy. Anastasia, anything to add from your seat?
So, excuse me. Yes, it was an honor to be a co-PI with Kathy on this grant. I do want to shout out 2 names just because I see Kiona here, who was instrumental in helping Kathy to get into some of the churches and using her connection with the United Methodist Church, where we got some of the first students, and then also Des, as she helped to get them onboarded to make sure we were covered from accreditation standpoint with ACPE. And I've met some of the students. I knew them before the CPE program, but also going to the space when they had graduation celebration and just feeling the move of the spirit. I could not fully understand everything. I think the word is poquito. And that's probably saying too much for giving myself too much credit. But just watching as students were glowing, as they were learning and thanking Reverend Dr. Kathy and Marcos for the work they had done with them. It was a holy spiritual experience. And so I also want to thank both of them for the great work. Marcos would always talk about this when we were training together, coming up together in this enterprise. And so keeping that at the forefront of one of the goals that I had. And then when Kathy came on, just really knew she already was doing the work before, and then just helping to transition that over into IU Health. So it's just been a wonderful program, and it has also increased the pipeline for bilingual, Spanish-speaking, hopefully chaplains in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you calling out Kiona. Kiona, your work and help, especially with meeting Pastora Undina, who's a United Methodist Church over there at Otterbein United Methodist Church on 21st and Emerson. She's been a great contact. She's very supportive and helpful. We were meeting in her church for the first unit. We're meeting in her church now for this unit. Very supportive. And that just wouldn't have happened, Kiona, without you. So I just want to second that. And I've appreciated working with Marcos. It is nice to have someone who's a native Spanish speaker to work with. In my 6 years doing this in Grand Rapids, it was just me. And Latinos often feel isolated in their situations and in their circumstances. And I felt a lot of that in Grand Rapids. I would feel a lot of that isolation as well, which I have not felt here because of the support, people like Kiona and Marcos. I don't feel like I'm quite so much doing it by myself like I did in Grand Rapids. So I'm very appreciative. Plus the grant the grant was just instrumental in giving us resources, translating everything. It's such a huge process, translating everything into Spanish, making resources available in Spanish, that kind of thing. So again, so thank you very much.
With that, I think we're at our time, and so I'm really grateful. And if Marcus is on, is he on? I don't think so. I will say it was a joy to see Marco doing education, and the outside of Marco, it's always just so lovely to see. Well, Alex, Shelley, thank you very much for this time. I know we're out of time. We could open up for questions for anybody who's able to stay on, but Lee, anything to add as the Chief Mission Values Officer?
I just want to say a great big thank you to you, to Dr. Lemons, to the team, the Evans Center, to be able to put theory into practice in such a tangible and impactful way is just remarkable. So thank you all so very much. Thank you.
Thanks for your leadership, Jay. You were the glue.
And with this wonderful presentation, I'll just remind folks that values grant cycle is going to be coming back around. So make sure you're checking our website and watching for our emails from Gloria Robertson. For those who may be interested in applying for values grant to spark spiritual care innovation. Would be excited to hear from you and talk with you about your ideas.
I just wanted to say one more thank you. I realize I was remiss, and the team lead chaplain here at IU Health West is on, Michael Gilbert. And Michael and Delana, our evening chaplain, have also been very supportive. Because we've been doing CPE on the east side of town, I kind of just go there for the day. Otherwise, the traffic's horrendous. I arrived terribly late to the first two sessions because of traffic getting from the west side to the east side of town. And Michael, especially Michael and Delana as well, have also been very supportive and helpful in all of this. And I would be very remiss if I didn't thank Michael as well. So thank you, Michael.
Great, thank you.
That's all, folks.
I could share we have what, 3 minutes?
We did.
I'll try to share a 1.5-minute story to thank you. And to say, I believe this exemplifies how you have set up your team and our family, I can call us that, for a very good transition. And you have a role, and have had a role in my life helping me with that. I remember last October, I was shocked when my mentor, Lexi Torkey, said she was leaving the institution. And then my neuro-oncology partner shared he had to leave for health reasons at the same time. And there was this moment of time where I had two things going on. One was I was asked to pick up all of my neuro-oncology partners' patients, and the work was going to be doubled. I would be the only neuro-oncologist for 8 months in the state at an academic center. And then as I had been leading pastoring in our church, I was asked if I could become the senior pastor in the church.
Whoa.
And so one of the spiritual, I think, innovations in spiritual care Jay has done was to be part of my scholarly oversight committee, to speak into a physician's life. And I remember vividly that meeting when I shared what was going on. You said, I think I'm the one to speak into this situation right now. Having had ministerial experience, you said, I don't know much about neuro-oncology, but I can tell you, you should take everything very slow. And I think over the months of that transition, seeing Lexi transition, getting to have this amazing opportunity to lead now with Shelley, a lot of it has to do with your wisdom and your ability to shepherd others through transition. So thank you.
And the only thing I'd amend is I know nothing about neuro. Not very little. I'm surprised. I'm so excited about where Evans Center is going. It's the dream. Speaking of the dream team, And it's gonna be really, really marvelous. And so I'm hoping for lots more innovation to come. I had an email from a colleague at Baylor, a new colleague at Baylor, Scott White. And her title was Director of Spiritual Care Innovation. And I had about a second jealousy, and I said, wait a minute, we've already got spiritual care innovation. It's already been happening here. We invented it. So pretty excited. Right. Go home, go home, go home.
None of us have to go back to work.
That's right.
We don't.
You don't get to go.
No, we're.